The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect that of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Commissioner's Corner, brought to you by the Virgin Islands Department of Education. I am your host, Commissioner Dr. Dionne Wells-Hedrington, and welcome. At the Virgin Islands Department of Education, we are transforming today's learners into tomorrow's leaders. And this platform allows us to have direct communication with our internal and external stakeholders as we share insights as to what is happening within the Virgin Islands Department of Education. You can see us every Tuesday at 5:30 live on 93.1 FM and our Facebook pages and YouTube pages, WTJX and VIDE. And so our first episode was really, really good. So I brought back two special people with me today, and both superintendents are here representing their respective districts. I have Dr. Stefan Jürgen from the St. Thomas St. John District.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again.
Welcome. And Dr. Ericilda Herman from the St. Croix District.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. So before we jump into some hot button topics, I cannot let us go by without expressing our appreciation for this weekend. There were several things that took place this weekend. We had the AgriFest, and we also had Central High School tournament, basketball tournament. And so I know I was in between both. And let's talk about the AgriFest first. I had the opportunity to be there as a cabinet member to the opening ceremony. And then immediately after the ribbon cutting, I had the opportunity to visit all the students' booths. And I was truly impressed with what I saw. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Superintendent Herman, your students were out and about and doing their thing. Can you let the community know some of what you saw at the AgriFest?
So the first thing I want to say is, it fits right into the topic tonight. And, from our agriculture program at Central High School, just Miss Nedsili just does a dynamic job between the chicken coop and just having the students farming. And then we had students who had their displays and all of their research in terms of STEM. So I'm very happy to see that we're a cultural community, but culture comes alive, and everything that students learn in the classroom was able to be displayed at the agriculture fair. So I'm excited, and I look forward to what else they're going to put forward for next year.
I was too. And as I was walking through, I was thinking, okay, how can I get students from the St. Thomas St. John District to experience this opportunity as well? So my wheels were turning, Dr. Jürgen, trying to figure out, okay, how can we get them over next year? But what did you witness when you went to the AgriFest?
Well, we actually did have some students from St. Thomas over here. I would like to get them over here in the mass, right? But, the students that came did have a good time. As I was walking through the fairground, they just kept hearing my name, and seeing all kinds of different students, members of the faculty and staff, folks from the Department of Education, just St. Thomas coming over, period. I saw the pride that the students took in displaying the plant displays, and also some of the local juices that the students made, and they could tell you the ingredients, how much they put in, and what benefits they have health-wise. I saw them taking care of their tea gardens.
Yes.
And also the animals were a big hit. Just to see that you paid $1 for the cup of feed, and then you go in there and you actually feed the animal, and it was exciting. It was like our version of Coney Island or something. It was really, really a good weekend. And then, as you mentioned, Commissioner, just going into the gym and seeing a packed house.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw a sporting arena in our schools where it was just packed from door to door? As a matter of fact, they had to make an announcement a couple of times so that we didn't block the gate because of the fire, exit. But those games are exciting also.
Yes.
And I just can't help but we have to set the stage for our students to be able to engage and play with each other, because when they do those things, it makes them more civil, more humane, and more, apt to dealing with a loss, or just, sizing up your component. And it just is all part of sportsmanship. And it was an exciting weekend. There was no dull moment. I don't have anything to do. It was either going from the gym to AgriFest to back and forth. It was just a back and forth.
Yeah. So I would like to shout out Alfredo Andrews.
Yes.
I had the opportunity to speak with the teacher, and I mentioned that we have the Commissioner's Corner, and I do want to bring the students on to talk about their projects that they participated in the agricultural fair on display. It was very, very intriguing. But I have to mention, of course, for me, the aviation program was a big hit as well as the welding program. They actually received the top award. And then I had the opportunity to visit the 21st Century table, and there was this young man. I can't remember his name, but he was from Alfredo Andrews, and he was selling me some oil, and he said, I said, do you know who I am? And he was like, no. And the one guy said, Commissioner? And I said, yes. He said, you're the commissioner? And I said, yes. I said, what are you selling? And he said, I have some oil. Your skin is so beautiful. And this oil will just help to bring out the beauty even more. So I bought the oil.
Oh, he's a seller.
And then
he's a seller.
He was definitely a salesman. And then he brought me some seasoning. He said, do you cook? I said, not as often as I need to. I said, well, I have some seasoning that's going to make your food taste wonderful. I made this myself. And so I bought the seasoning as
your
well.
pocket was empty when you were done it.
But you know what? Supporting the kids, the children is an important thing. And that is what we promote at the Virgin Islands Department of Education, not just academics, but the development of the whole child. And so going from the AgriFest and seeing the educational displays to then going to the gym and being a part of that exhilarating games that we witnessed was also very intriguing and noteworthy. And congratulations to Central High boys and girls for taking the first place spot. And all the students know me now. I'm very much involved in the athletics arena. I think that our children deserve every opportunity to showcase their skills, and that is what we're doing at the department. So today, though, we're going to spend some time talking about the whole child.
Okay.
We started the first episode talking about student achievement and lack thereof, and the direction that we're going with the school improvement planning process, and giving principals a little bit more autonomy to put together plans to address those learning deficiencies. And we talk about student literacy a lot. And I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to see a TikTok video that had been circulating talking about how our students are just iPad driven. And there were students, there were little small babies who were throwing tantrums because their devices were being taken from them. And so it talked about the different kinds of students we are now working with since the development of the iPad from 2010. And so it's a digital era. And we are now having to shift our focus to meet the students where they are and embracing the technology and using the technology to drive what we're doing. So when we talk about the work that we're doing with the school improvement process, we can't forget the instructional process. Right. And Superintendent Herman, you touched a little bit on some of what you're doing to support your teachers now. Do you have any plans for the future now that we're looking at the data more closely and you're able to see where there may be deficiencies district-wide and individually? What are some of those plans?
So it's so funny because we had our student council meetings last week, and when we met with the high schoolers, they talked about infrastructure, and I said, okay, enough of that. Tell me about instruction. What's happening in the classroom? And they spoke about engagement. They spoke about the fact these were their words, we have different learning styles. And so at the high schools, we're looking at what does core instruction need to be? What strategies do you need to put in place for these students who have everything at their fingertips? literally Google. They're in a microwave era. So we're looking at the high school, how do we shift student engagement and how do we support our teachers in supporting instruction to meet the needs of the different learning styles that students have. Elementary, we're looking more at content because that's what they're trained in. Elementary teachers are trained in how do I teach. So we're building up their content. But for secondary, we're really looking at building that full menu of these are different strategies that children could have.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned student engagement. Today I met with the students at Charlotte Amalia High School. And when we were talking about engagement, one of the students said that she's afraid of artificial intelligence.
Ooh.
And I said,
That's different.
Well, what do you mean? She said, I feel like students we are dumbing down the ability of students to use their knowledge. This is a student, a senior at Charlotte Amalia High School. And I said, you're absolutely right. She said, yes. So I'll be in a class and my classmates are using artificial intelligence, whether it's ChatGPT, and they're coming up with these answers that they can't even explain. And so it's a change. And even at the Department of Education, we have to figure out how we're going to embrace the
AI,
artificial intelligence,
That's right.
but also make sure that our students are using it as a supplement, not as the main thing.
Right.
Because she's absolutely right. She said when cell phones, let's say you're in a situation where you can't have your cell phone as a tool and you have to be able to explain something, her fear is that her classmates have become so dependent on the technology that they now are not using enough of their brain. I thought that was extremely powerful, and it's enlightening when our children can see the pros and cons to the new era that we're in. So
right.
Dr. Jürgen, I know that you have regular visits and you have discussions with students as well. What are some of the things that the students have talked to you about that are challenging for them or that they may feel need to improve within our buildings? Anything that you would like to share with the community?
You know what amazes me? It's almost as though the students are right there in front on the cutting edge. Sadly, sometimes even before the adults, before the teachers. It would surprise you how many students actually know and have used ChatGPT when adults have not.
Right.
And I kid you not, my first reaction to ChatGPT was stay away from that thing. That thing is cheating, it's plagiarism, but you've got to know how to use it. And so I had to change my whole perspective. Because initially I told my deputies, don't you use that thing. But now, even if you're looking to see if you're proofing something, it can be used in that way, but you still have to do the work. But it can polish the work that you have and give you some options that maybe you didn't think about. And so the fact that our students are using it, we've got to understand and show them the way that they can use it correctly so that it can be for their benefit and not their downfall.
Yeah, they have to use it responsibly.
And as a department, we will have to invest in AI readers for teachers as well. And then kind of educate our teachers in, don't shun them away from it, because sometimes we have a negative reaction like, oh, it's plagiarism, but teach them just like we would have taught them how to not use someone else's paper or to not directly cite stuff. Teach them how to use it, but we have to teach our teachers how to use it first.
We have to always know how to pivot. I remember when the convenience of texting came out.
Yes.
And you replace the Y or U with the U. It's okay if you're talking to your friends and you want to send a message quickly for you to insert the U. But then you have to switch when you're in a different setting.
Correct.
And you're using your language for a different purpose. Then you must use the Y or U.
Right. And some of our students are unable to do that.
Right.
And that's where teaching that core instruction is very important. And we talked a little bit about us focusing on the pre-K to third. And I want to spend a little time there tonight because that is the foundational level.
Yeah.
And that's where we realize that we have to do more intentional, intensive work with our early learners so that gap that we're seeing is minimized. And so, Superintendent Herman, what are some of the things that you're doing with your pre-K to third students?
So we've already started and it's so funny, we already started the science of reading training for teachers. We have our...
And what is that?
So that's really, and we talked about it the last time, that's really where we teach teachers how to teach reading. We remind them how to teach reading, how to get back to the basics of phonics, like down to the foundational parts of reading. And it's kind of what everybody thought that we moved away from, and we're just solidifying it and making it stronger. For our pre-K students, for example, I started to read aloud, and it's not just for pre-K. I've done it so far. I've done it in elementary as well as in high school, but we are really promoting reading and writing. And for them, we're focusing in on the basic mathematics and just numeracy, just numbers, adding, and then for reading, going back into those things. But when we look at the supplements, we've just infused them with additional supplemental books for them to read so we could build their interest in reading. Our elementary programs person, Ms. Cruz Peters, has been diligently supporting our pre-K to third teachers, and we want to continue to support them in just building their instructional practices around our students.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. Now that we have pre-K in our schools, we're able to do a deeper dive into the data to see how those students that entered into public school in pre-K versus those who just came in kinder, how they're faring.
Yep.
How is teaching and learning or learning occurring for them? What gains do we see? I think we're going to get to a place where we really need to look at expanding our pre-K, because I could tell you that based on research, the data is going to look very much different. And more positive towards having them coming in at that pre-K level. Have you visited any pre-K classes? Tell me what you've seen.
Absolutely. And it's something that you really have to look for and appreciate, because the pre-K experience, and I call it an experience because you're not just doing one thing. The classroom is set up with like 15 different stations, and something important that those children need as far as their development occurs in each station. And one might be listening, and one might be writing, and one might be playing, and one might be dancing, and one might be touching, but it all comes together. And in the pre-K classroom, you're using your senses, you're using your motor skills, your kinesthetic, so you're using the entire body, and it all just comes together for the making of addressing our learning styles. So that's where you see this child benefits more from moving around, while this one is hands-on, while this one looks at something, can memorize it, and can move from there. So it's really important component, and I can see where students are at a disadvantage if they don't have a start like the one we're offering.
Right. And what have you seen?
So for me, I echo Dr. Jürgen, and more so I want to say that the transition from our pre-K programs to kindergarten is smooth. Because they're already in their schools. And so it's a strong program. I do agree in expanding it.
Yes, so definitely going to look at that. I want to touch a little bit on culture. And today I had the opportunity to sit in on the leadership training with your principals, assistant principals, and coordinators, Dr. Jürgen. And the conversation was around biases and identifying your biases, and how do you pivot from them? How do you think about them? How do you create a plan and actually execute so that you remain neutral as a leader, not coming in with your own assumptions and preconceived notions when you're dealing with employees or even parents and students? One of the things that students have said in our rounds of meetings with the student council is student engagement, student life, and the campuses being a welcoming environment where there's more activities that bring the students together with the faculty and staff. And I could remember at Complex, they were excited about the activities that they had and were looking for ways to expand those activities. So when we talk about social emotional learning and really looking at the mental health of our students and our faculty and staff, it is very critical that the department provide wraparound services, that we provide avenues for our students to get the assistance that they need, as well as the faculty and staff. And so in terms of social emotional learning, what is your district doing around that particular initiative?
Well, we have a whole lot of things that are going on with social and emotional. Let me just tell you, it covers a broad spectrum. So in the classroom, it's important to use, if you're working on a particular phenomena, use the children's name to make it more personal. We tend to focus on the relaxation techniques and those things that help children just remain happy, right? Playtime is important in a school. It has to be supervised, but children are supposed to have that outlet where they can go and mingle amongst their friends and have a good time. Doing mindless activities. I might start off with, I'm going to say and fruit with the letter A. So I might say apple, you might say banana, and then we go around the room. That's mindless. That's clearing your mind from something heavy, doing something easy so that you can come into, dealing the work that you need to do. But it's a broad spectrum. I have someone in my district, Miss Deshawn Williams, that spends a lot of time bringing in resources into our schools, also working with parents so that they can, foster wellness techniques with their students as well as with faculty and staff members. So it's a whole continuum of things that we're doing in our school. Also, if you look at our morning assemblies, just respecting our identity and starting with the rituals, and it's Black History Month, making sure that we take the time to let them know knowledge of self. All of those things play into social and emotional learning and wellness.
Yes, and St. Croix District, what are you doing?
So we have Ms. Giselle Shang, who takes the lead on social emotional wellness, and she's dynamic. So she brings in outside agencies, Department of Health, our different, not just agencies, but also nonprofits and private providers to work with our students. She works with our deans of students at the high schools to put on clinics and supports. And then each of our schools have their own activities that they do. For example, we talk about the whole child, and last week we had at Central High, they had an employee versus students basketball game.
Right.
And the employees won the first round, but the students came back. They wasn't having it. At Educational Complex today, there was a whole celebration around the cheerleaders, but more so they talked about the fact that they had games and activities. At Juanita Gardine, there's social emotional activities that they pour forth, or cultural activities like at Alfredo Andrews and at Claudio Marco. So as a district, we support them overarchingly, but then schools themselves and principals themselves and counselors take such a strong lead in what we do when it comes to the social emotional wellness. So whether it's journal writing, puzzles, whether it's just having one-on-one sessions with their counselors, we make sure that the whole child is adapted.
So one of the things that the students at Charlotte Amalia High School mentioned today was the fact that their heart bleeds for those students who come from another country where their first language is not English.
Wow.
They talked about the ESL students and the fact that they're sitting in classes and they just feel that they're underserved. And I said to them, well, imagine me taking you and placing you in Mexico. You guys speak Spanish. And sometimes I think that we lose track of how those students feel in our environment where English is not their first language. And so I said, so we need to be more sensitive and more cooperative and work with them when we get in classrooms with them. And so the students said, yeah, we do. But, I think the teachers struggle because there's a language barrier. And I said, well, I know that the districts have different things that they're working on to get the teachers trained. And it's an ongoing something that will continue. But I applauded them for recognizing and acknowledging the diversity plays a big part in the educational experience of our students. So, as I go from each of the high schools, I am totally impressed with the level of knowledge and how educated and well spoken our children are, and I just encourage them to continue. And they're all about their GPAs. They were talking about their GPAs and wanting to make sure that they're ranking up in the top 10, and that's the kind of thing that we want to promote throughout the territory. And so education is we never have a dull moment, eh?
No, never.
Never have a
Not at
dull
all.
moment. There's always something exciting happening at the Department of Education, and there's lots of work to do. So I know a lot of people are concerned about our literacy rates, and I know that Superintendent Herman, you have your initiative where you're going into the school to read. I want us to get back to where we had reading challenges, where students were challenged to read 10 books a semester. And if they read the 10 books and they passed the assessment on the book that asks for comprehension, asks comprehension questions, they were given credit. And really start to promote silent, sustained reading. Drop everything and read.
Yep.
Go out on the lawn and read, because our children aren't reading. The devices have substituted our children's lives. Instead of them taking up the book, they take up their devices. But we can use the devices to put their books on.
That's right.
And encourage them to read, because now we have ITMS,
Yeah.
we have apps for gaps, and we have all these things that we've invested in that we are promoting here at the Department of Education. So Superintendent Herman, you have 30 seconds to wrap up before I allow Superintendent Jürgen to do so.
So I want to concisely say, with the literacy initiative that Ms. Krosky has organized for me, it's really been great going in and doing read alouds and writing activities with the students, teaching a mini lesson. Today was a prime example. One of the students was an ESL student, couldn't speak any English, and we used Google Lens to have her translate the book that I was reading. So it's really a push community. We're here to support and to serve and to teach. My love is teaching. So we will continue to build the whole child.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Commissioner, I think you hit it on the head in this last one where you mentioned, really as a community, I don't think we're doing enough to serve literacy all across the board. Literacy isn't a school thing, it's a community thing. And so there should be more book clubs, and there should be read alouds. And, reading is such a big part of all of our lives. I think that even in our schools, we need to, as you mentioned, they might have the reading on their device, but we have to go back to increasing the stamina that our students have, because they're not reading enough. And so at least if you start off reading for 5 minutes and that increases to 10 and that goes to 15, that's how we get them to where we need to be.
And I think that we too have a responsibility in modeling that for our students as well. We need to read more too. And I find myself so caught up in work that sometimes I don't get to open a good book.
That's correct.
But that commitment is there for all of us. And it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just the Department of Education, but it's all of we
But Commissioner,
working
let me throw
together.
this one piece in. The last time the governor came to Shadomali High School to meet Chevelle Simeon, they got into the Teacher of the Year. They got into a back and forth about the books that they're reading. The classics, the number of classics that the governor has read is truly impressive.
Yes. So, community, thank you for joining us at the Commissioner's Corner. We will see you again next Tuesday right here at 5:30. Thank you. So,
Opinions expressed are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect that of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
The evening, the 20th of February, we may see an isolated shower tonight. Overnight lows range from 72 to 76. Winds will become light east to southeasterly. We may see a few spotty showers tomorrow. In between, some intervals of sun and clouds, low to mid 80s. Showers will dry up tomorrow night, middle 70s. It'll be a partly sunny sky on Thursday, low to mid 80s. Back to mostly sunny skies with temperatures in the middle 80s on Friday. Rip current risk will remain moderate, particularly in north and east-facing beaches on Wednesday. Take WTJX on the go. Check out the WTJX app. It's available for download from the App Store and Google Play.
WTJX 93.1 Charlotte Amalia, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands.
Perhaps a few of you in the media came here today to see if I'm dropping out of the race. Well, I'm not.
Nikki Haley has yet to win a Republican primary, but she's staying in the race. She says Americans deserve a choice.
For Tuesday, February 20th, this is All Things Considered from NPR News.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Elsa Chang. This hour, a British court is hearing arguments on whether WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange can appeal his extradition to the U.S.
Assange's wife argues that way more than her husband's case is at stake.
It's an attack on all journalists all over the world. It's an attack on the truth.